The imposition of a 200-day over 45% tariff on Chinese goods marked the beginning of a collapse in trade relations between China and the United States. And as expected, the effects are already being felt. Chinese factories are shutting down, workers are being laid off en masse, and business owners are on the brink of bankruptcy. The Chinese Communist Party did not anticipate such a direct and severe impact. According to Goldman Sachs, up to 20 million Chinese workers could lose their jobs due to the drastic drop in exports. American companies are canceling orders by the millions, and China simply cannot find new markets to absorb this lost demand. The result? A strained and unstable economy. Take the case of a Chinese entrepreneur who reports how his factory went from profitable to operating at a loss virtually overnight after the tariffs were implemented. In the city of Xing, many business owners are going bankrupt. One example, when purchasing $100 worth of goods, they are forced to pay $145 in U.S. customs tariffs. Mr. Zhang, the owner of a textile factory, racked up a $200,000 cost on a single shipment of polyester, a product that used to generate around $50,000 in profit. Now, with the new tariffs, he's facing a $40,000 loss. Desperate, Zhang cried in front of his warehouse. His fabric, once easily exported, now can't find buyers, not even to be used as dish rags. Like many others, his cash flow has been cut off and orders have been canceled. So now what? Meanwhile, the Chinese Communist Party spends over $30 billion a year on propaganda, both inside and outside the country, including disinformation campaigns in the West. Hundreds of Chinese bot farms operate online, trying to suppress content critical of the regime through downvotes and automated comments. That's why, if you can support us by clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel, you'll be helping to fight this manipulation and support independent journalism. For a factory, the cancellation of orders is not just a loss. It's practically a death sentence. We're not just talking about losing money, but about losing the entire business and the livelihood of hundreds of families. To understand why, we need to understand how these factories operate. Imagine you're a large clothing company and you decide to manufacture t-shirts in China, as was common before the imposition of tariffs. You find a factory capable of handling the volume you need, let's say a $500,000 order of pants. But here's the detail. You don't pay the $500,000 up front. Instead, it's common to pay only a deposit, something between $25,000 and $50,000. This amount is just enough for the factory to start production, and this is where the risk begins. These factories operate on very thin profit margins, usually between 5% and 15%. On a $500,000 order, the expected profit is at most $75,000. This means the factory needs to invest around $400,000 to buy raw materials and begin production. But remember, the client only paid a small deposit. So to cover the cost, the factory has to use its own cash or take out bank loans. The plan is simple. Produce the goods, ship them, receive the $500,000 payment, pay the bank, cover payroll, and hopefully keep a small profit. This system works when everything goes right. But when tariffs are suddenly applied, as is happening now, orders start getting canceled. And these factories, which have already invested everything into production, are left with unsold goods and growing debts. The promised money simply doesn't arrive. That's why so many factories in China are shutting down. Many factory owners have gone into debt to produce goods they can no longer sell. Without customer payments, they can't pay the banks or their workers. Some factories are declaring bankruptcy. Others are simply paralyzed, unable to keep operating. And the worst part, thousands of workers are going without wages. This is a crisis that the Chinese Communist Party is watching with deep concern. Because this isn't just about numbers, it is a domino effect that threatens the country as social and economic stability. China's largest manufacturers are now facing severe difficulties. They're being hit by order cancellations worth tens, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars. Cancellations they simply cannot withstand. These companies invested heavily to fulfill those orders. They took out massive loans, bet everything. And when an order of that size gets canceled, collapse is almost inevitable. Bankruptcy becomes a direct consequence. Hearing these stories, it's impossible not to feel empathy for those losing their businesses overnight. Businesses that were thriving just weeks ago, now facing total ruin. But it's important to remember, many of these major manufacturers did not play fair on the global stage, especially when dealing with partners like the United States. In China, intellectual property laws are simply not respected. To understand the impact of that, imagine this. You create an innovative product, something that begins improving lives in the United States. Your sales grow. Your company gains strength. Then suddenly cheap copies of your product start appearing on the market. Those copies come from large Chinese manufacturers. They don't just manufacture for American companies, they also copy. They take your design, replicate your product, and sell it in the same markets at lower prices. In the US, you could sue them for patent infringement. But in China, the system simply ignores that right. American patents are not respected. And worse, many of these companies have direct ties to the Chinese Communist Party. In practice, this means the Chinese state allows, and in many cases encourages, intellectual property theft. For decades, Chinese companies have profited by copying products from American founders and reselling them to US consumers without facing any legal consequences. And that is precisely why these tariffs were introduced, to correct that imbalance, to level the playing field. If Chinese companies can sue American companies in the US for legal violations, then American companies should be able to do the same in China. It has to go both ways or not at all. In the end, the idea is simple: fair and free competition. But what exists in China today isn't capitalism. It is mercantilism, a system where the country demands access to global markets while keeping its own market closed to foreign companies. Unfortunately, those who suffer the most from all this are the ordinary citizens of China. Millions of workers are losing their jobs. And now, millions of recent graduates are entering a job market that shrinks with each passing day. For them, finding work has become even harder. This crisis is not just economic. It is the result of decades of political and strategic decisions made by the Chinese Communist Party, and the people are the ones paying the price. The actions of the Chinese Communist Party don't stop at tariffs. Now, they are also retaliating with direct actions. One of the most symbolic was aimed at the US aviation industry. To show the Chinese people that they won't back down without a fight, the party banned Chinese airlines from purchasing Boeing aircraft. That's right, the Chinese government ordered a suspension of new purchases from the American manufacturer, but this decision comes at a high cost, and it could backfire. It's likely that Xi Jinping will reverse this decision soon. Why? Because the reality is simple. There are currently over 200 Boeing airplanes in operation in China, and all of them rely on original Boeing parts and equipment for maintenance. Without that technical support, these planes are at risk of failure. And yes, they could literally start falling out of the sky, as has happened in Russia since being cut off from Western technical support. This is not magic or exaggeration. It's a matter of operational safety, and the responsibility for any issues that arise will fall directly on the Chinese Communist Party. And there's more. Besides the planes already in operation, Chinese airlines have ordered hundreds of new Boeings, which were supposed to be delivered this year, next year, and in the years to come. Without those aircraft, China's aviation sector will not be able to grow or meet the increasing demand for flights within the country. This represents another blow to an economy already weakened by tariffs and shrinking exports. But perhaps the greatest embarrassment of this decision lies in something ironic, even symbolic. Xi Jinping himself flies in a Boeing. The Chinese presidential aircraft, the equivalent of Air Force One, is a Boeing 747. So, while Xi Jinping orders Chinese airlines to stop buying from Boeing, he himself relies on Boeing for his personal security and transportation. Perhaps he recognizes deep down that American-made airplanes are safer than domestic alternatives. This perfectly sums up China's trade policy. Rules for you, not for me. Xi Jinping demands that the world follow the rules of the World Trade Organization, yet China refuses to follow those same rules. And now, the world is starting to react. People are calling out this hypocrisy and demanding something simple: a fair deal with clear and equal rules for all. What we're witnessing now is the beginning of a profound transformation in global trade relations. Tariffs, order cancellations, and retaliations are just the first signs of a new era of accountability. The world is starting to demand justice, reciprocity, and respect for the rules. And while the leaders of the Chinese Communist Party try to maintain the image of strength, it's the workers, the young graduates, and the small business owners in China who suffer the most, who now face an uncertain future due to decisions that weren't theirs. The big question is, how long will the current system hold up? If you've made it this far, you understand how important it is to truly grasp what lies behind political speeches and decisions. This isn't just about the economy, it's about power, control, and global consequences. If you found this video useful or enlightening, don't forget to leave a like. It helps tremendously in spreading this content and fighting against the censorship and algorithms that try to bury this information. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. We always get straight to the point, with analyses you won't find in mainstream media. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.